Good morning. I'm going to be sharing with you the top news stories making rounds today. This is the top news rundown. My name is Tammy Tokwe. Welcome to today's episode. Well, we have a couple of stories making the rounds this morning. First up, let's look at the story um, about three U.S. soldiers that were found dead in Lithuania. And unfortunately, one still missing after vehicle is swallowed by pit bug. And this is coming from NBC News. I'm just going to read you a little bit of the story. Now, the U.S. Army soldiers went missing last week during a training exercise with Lithuanian armed forces and law enforcement. Unfortunately, the bodies of three U.S. Army soldiers who went missing in Lithuania during a training exercise last week have been found, unfortunately, and a fourth remains missing, military officials said Monday. The soldiers went missing the morning of March 25th after their M88A2 Hercules armored recovery vehicle became submerged in a pit bog during a mission to repair and tow an immobilized tactical vehicle. The identities of the soldiers were all from 1st Brigade Combat Team 3rd Infantry Division are being withheld pending family notification. The U.S. Army Europe and Africa Public Affairs said. Now, search and recovery operations are ongoing for the remaining fourth soldier. The soldiers had been deployed to Lithuania in support of Operation Atlantic Resolve and were permanently stationed at Fort Stewart, Georgia, military officials said. Lithuanian armed forces and law enforcement worked alongside them during last week's training exercise. Their 63-ton armored vehicle was removed from the pit bog early Monday morning after an arduous 6-day effort. And earlier this week, the U.S. Army said hundreds of soldiers and law enforcement personnel, American and Lithuanian, scoured the thick forest and swampy terrain to find the missing soldiers. The recovery effort required specialized equipment to stabilize the soft ground in the area. The effort included Lithuanian military helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft, unmanned aerial systems, as well as excavators, sluice and slurry pumps, and several hundred tons of gravel and earth. And this is coming from NBC News. And once again, the headline says 3 U.S. soldiers found dead in Lithuania, one still missing after vehicle is swallowed by pit bug. Very tragic indeed. Very tragic indeed. Now let's move on to another story here, another top news story here. And this is coming from USA Today. Now, according to this story, it says Trump threatens more tariffs as his rollout of import taxes nears. And I'm just going to go ahead and just read a bit out of the story for you. President Donald Trump pressed his case for global tariffs Monday by posting a list on social media of U.S. companies threatening, U.S. companies considering, major domestic expansion plans, hours after threatening Russia and Iran with secondary tariffs and suggested levies will help the U.S. auto industry make a lot of money. Trump has repeatedly said he will announce details Wednesday for his tariffs aimed at curtailing the flow of foreign goods into the U.S. Now, economists warn that tariffs will drive up prices for Americans, but Trump has focused on the hundreds of billions of dollars in new investment projects companies are planning to avoid the import taxes. Now, Trump said his tariffs won't just target nations that contribute most to the U.S. trade deficit. Now, moving more here on this story. You'll stop with all countries, Trump to reporters Sunday night aboard Air Force One. There is not a cutoff. Trump's remarks provided clarification on the scope of the tariffs after Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently said the 15% of nations with persistent trade imbalances with the US will be most impacted by the tariffs. Okay, and Basin has called this the dirty 15 countries. Now, once again, the headline says Trump threatens more tariffs as his rollout of import taxes nears, and that is coming from USA Today once again. Now, let's move on to another Trump story. This is from CBS News, and this story says Trump criticizes both Putin and Zelensky as he pushes for Ukraine ceasefire. Now, let me give you a bit more of the details on the story. Says President Trump lashed out at Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky on Sunday, expressing frustration with the Russian and Ukrainian leaders as he struggles to forge a truce in a three-year-old war between their nations. Now, although Mr. Trump insisted to reporters that we're making a lot of progress, he acknowledged that there is tremendous hatred between the two men, a fresh indication that negotiations may not produce the swift conclusion that he promised during the campaign. Now, moving on along with this news story right here, it says, although Mr. Trump insisted to reporters that we are making a lot of progress, he acknowledged that there is tremendous hatred between the two men. Okay. Also, Mr. Trump began voicing his criticisms in an early morning interview with NBC News while he was at Mar-a-Lago, his private club in Florida. He said he was angry, pissed off that Putin questioned Zelensky's credibility. Now, once again, this is coming from CBS News, and the headline says, once more, Trump criticizes both Putin and Zelensky as he pushes for Ukraine ceasefire. And I'm just going to hand this cover one more out of this top stories this morning. And this is from Fox News, and it says, South Carolina death row inmate invokes sovereign citizen defense and bid to avoid execution. Yes, and so more on this story about the South Carolina death row inmate, Stephen Bixby. This is coming from Fox News, and it says, South Carolina death row inmate invokes sovereign citizen defense in a bid to avoid execution. Stephen Bixby is on death row in South Carolina for killing two law enforcement officers. Now, let me just go ahead and just read out a bit of the story for you, a bit of the details for you for more understanding. Now, attorneys for a South Carolina death row inmate whose execution is imminent are making a last-ditch argument that their client is incompetent to be executed partly because of his belief that he is a sovereign citizen. Now, Stephen Bixby and his father, Arthur Bixby, led a 12-hour gun battle with law enforcement in Abbeville, South Carolina on December 8, 2003 that resulted in deaths of two police officers. The standoff, during which thousands of rounds of ammunition were exchanged between the Bixbys and the police, stemmed from an attempt by the South Carolina Department of Transportation to widen a highway by using an easement on Bixby property. The Bixbys claimed that the easement was fabricated or, in any case, irrelevant. Now, the standoff, during which thousands of rounds of ammunition were exchanged between the Bixbys and the police, like I said, stemmed from an attempt by the South Carolina Department of Transportation to widen a highway by using an easement on the Bixby property. That was the bone of contention. Well, that is it on today's episode of the Top News Rundown today. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Tammy Tokwe. I'll join you and see you next time on another episode.